The goal of this video is to place the idea of comparative advantage into the context of trading nations. Our method is to construct a model that relies on the PPF curve. Suppose the world consists of just two nations, the United States and Russia. Each nation can produce both guns and butters at different levels of efficiency. Suppose the United States can produce 1,200 guns or 300 butters, and Russia can produce either 600 guns or 300 butters. Let's see how to figure out which nation should produce guns and which nation should produce butter. Step 1. Construct the chart. Step 2. Determine if the problem is an input problem or an output problem. We can calculate the quantity of a good produced, output, or we can measure the number of resources, input, necessary to create a product. Some examples of output is the total number of final goods like guns, butter, or automobiles. Example of inputs are number of hours used to make a good, gallons of paint used to paint a good, number of acres, or number of days. Since our example is talking about the number of actual products, guns and butter, it is an output problem. Step 3. Determine which country has the absolute advantage. Remember, a country has an absolute advantage if it can produce more of an object with the same amount of resources. There are no calculations involved in figuring out who has absolute advantage. Since our example was an output problem, America has the absolute advantage in both guns and butter. America produces 1,200 units of guns compared to Russia's 600 units of guns, and 300 units of butter compared to Russia's 200 units of butter. What if the problem was an input problem? Would this change absolute advantage? The answer is yes. Notice that instead of actual number of goods, this example is looking at the hours to make both guns and butter. In our example, Russia has the absolute advantage. Russia can make a gun in 600 minutes, and America can make a gun in 1,200 minutes. Russia is better because they are using less resources. The same goes to the production of butter. Russia can produce butter in 200 minutes compared to America's 300 minutes. In an output problem, the highest number has the absolute advantage, but in an input problem, the lower number has the absolute advantage. Step 4 and 5. Figuring out comparative advantage. Let's start by calculating the opportunity cost for guns. Since this is an output problem and output starts with the letter O, you must put the output of the one product over the output of the other product. Let's focus our attention on the gun column. In order to calculate the opportunity costs, you would take the 300 units of butter for America and place it over the 1,200 units of guns. Well, what does this number mean? This number means that in order for America to produce 1,200 guns, it must give up 300 units of butter. To calculate the cost of just one gun, you need to divide the 1,200 into the 300. This would give you an opportunity cost of 1/4 or 0.25 units of butter. So what this means is, for America to produce one gun, it has to give up 0.25 units of butter. To calculate the opportunity cost for Russia to make one gun, you would have to place the 200 units of butter over the 600 units of guns. This means to produce 600 guns, Russia has to give up 200 units of butter. To calculate how much Russia would have to give up to produce one gun, you would divide 600 into 200. This means that Russia would give up 0.33 units of butter to produce one gun. Because America has a lower opportunity cost, they only have to give up 0.25 units of butter, where Russia has to give up 0.33 units of butter. America has the comparative advantage and should produce guns. Let's now calculate the opportunity cost to produce butter. To produce butter, both countries would have to give up some production of guns. Since we are talking about butter, we must go to the butter column. In order to figure out the opportunity cost for butter, you must put the number of guns over the number of butter. For the United States, you would take the 1,200 units of guns and place them over the 300 units of butter. What this means is, to produce 300 units of butter, America would have to give up 1,200 units of gun. When calculating the opportunity cost for one gun, you must divide by 300. This means the opportunity cost to produce 1 unit of butter in America is 4 guns. To calculate Russia's opportunity cost of producing butter, you must take Russia's production of guns and put it over the production of butter. This gives Russia 600 over 200. This means that for Russia to produce 200 units of butter, they must give up 600 units of guns. In order to find the opportunity cost of 1 unit of butter, you must divide by 200. This would give you an opportunity cost of 3 guns. Since Russia gives up only 3 guns to produce 1 unit of butter, and America gives up 4 guns to produce 1 unit of butter, Russia has the comparative advantage in butter and should produce butter. If instead of calculating the number of guns in butter, we would calculate the amount of time it takes to produce guns and butter, the problem would change from an output problem to an input problem. By doing this, we would be changing the comparative advantage. Since input starts with an I, you will put the other number into instead of over. For example, to calculate the opportunity cost of producing guns, you would take the minutes to produce butter, 300, and put that number underneath 1,200 minutes to create a gun. After dividing by 300, America, to produce 1 gun, would have to give up 4 minutes of creating butter. To calculate the opportunity cost of producing guns in Russia, you would place the 200 minutes used to create butter underneath the 600 minutes used to create guns. After dividing by 200, the opportunity cost for Russia to create 1 gun would be to give up 3 minutes of creating butter. In this case, Russia has comparative advantage. In order to produce 1 gun, Russia only has to give up 3 minutes of creating butter, where the United States has to give up 4 minutes of creating butter. Whereas in the output problem, America had the comparative advantage. Now let's look at the production of butter. To calculate which country has the comparative advantage in the production of butter, you need to determine which country gives up less time in the production of guns. Since it is an input problem, you will take the minutes to produce guns and put it into the minutes to produce butter. For the United States, you will take the 1,200 minutes to make a gun and put it into or underneath the 300 minutes to make butter. After dividing by 1,200, the opportunity cost of producing butter in America is 0.25 minutes of producing guns. To figure out the opportunity cost for Russia, you will take the 600 minutes to produce the guns and put that into or underneath the 200 minutes to make a unit of butter. After dividing by 600, the opportunity cost of making a unit of butter is 0.33 minutes of making guns. America now has comparative advantage in making butter because it only has to give up 0.25 minutes compared to Russia, who has to give up 0.33 minutes. We know that specialization in production allows for the greatest amount of both guns and butters. But with each country specializing in the production of one item, how will the guns produced by the United States be divided between the two countries? The key turns out to be the terms of trade. Terms of trade will determine whether a country gets a better deal by specialization. To determine a successful terms of trade, the number must fall between the opportunity cost of both countries. For example, one gun for 0.29 units of butter. To see if this trade would work, you must go to the gun column. Always go to the column that has the 1 in the terms of trade. 0.29 falls between both numbers, so both countries would find it acceptable. This benefits America because on their own, they could only make 0.25 units of butter. With the trade, they will get 0.29 units of butter. Since Russia is only making butter, it would have to give up 0.33 butter to make a gun. In the trade, they only have to give up 0.29 butter. Everybody benefits from a terms of trade from one gun for 0.29 units of butter. But what happens when the terms of trade is one gun for one butter? Someone is not going to be happy. Let's look at the term of trade for one gun to one butter. Remember in our example, America is producing just guns and Russia is producing just butter. If the terms of trade is one gun for one butter, one of these countries will not benefit. One does not fall between 0.25 and 0.33. Let's see which country would not benefit. Let's go to the gun column. America is just producing guns. If America decides not to produce one gun, it could gain 0.25 of butter. But in a trade, it could gain a full unit of butter. So America would benefit from the trade. Russia, on the other hand, would not benefit. Russia is just producing butter. To produce one gun, they would have to give up only 0.33 units of butter. But in the trade, they would have to give up a full unit of butter. For a trade to benefit both countries, the terms of trade has to fall between the two opportunity costs. The one gun for 0.29 units of butter will benefit both the United States and Russia because 0.29 falls between 0.25 and 0.33. A terms of trade of one butter for 3.5 guns falls between the opportunity cost of 4 butter and 3 guns. So remember, when choosing a terms of trade, always choose one that is equal to or in between the two opportunity costs.